get comfortable wherever you are, and bring your mind within. Try to focus your attention on your mind or another object of meditation for a minute or so. And then, as usual, then let's visualize ourselves surrounded by all sentient beings. With our mother and father to our left and right, and then all our other family and friends seated around us. And then those who we find most difficult to deal with, we feel are antagonistic, seated directly in front, facing towards us, and all the other sentient beings in human form. Imagine seated all around oneself, and feel how you're interconnected with all of them, and how they're the same, all the same as oneself, and wishing to be free from every suffering and wishing to have every happiness. So try to generate an equal sense of concern for all sentient beings, not being biased against those we dislike and towards those we like, but having recognizing how in countless past lives, in this life and future lives, all sentient beings have been both our friend, enemy, stranger, and rather have equal concern for all sentient beings. So let's meditate briefly on the four immeasurables. I'll share my screen, and then if you'd like, you can recite each of these together. So I'll read each once, and then we just meditate on each briefly. So first is immeasurable equanimity. So we think how wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to abide in equanimity, free from attachment to friends and anger towards enemies. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please, Guru Buddha, grant me blessings to be able to do this. So try to generate the strong aspiration to cause all sentient beings to abide in equanimity without attachment for some and anger towards others, have equal concern for one another. And relate that to this session. I think therefore I'll engage in this session, this teaching on the two truths. And then next is immeasurable love. So try to think how wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and its causes. I myself will cause them to have these. Please, Guru Buddha, grant me blessings to be able to do this. That's visualizing oneself surrounded by all sentient beings. Try to generate this attitude. And especially related to the two truths in this teaching. In order to bring about the happiness of all sentient beings and the cause of happiness, and therefore I'll study the two truths. And then immeasurable compassion. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from these. Please, Guru Buddha, grant me blessings to be able to do this. And for this purpose, then I'll study the two truths. And then finally, immeasurable joy. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to never be separated from the happiness which is totally beyond suffering. May they never be separated from this. I myself will cause them to be never separated from this. Please, Guru Buddha, grant me blessings to be able to do this. So in order to cause all sentient beings to never be separated from the happiness which is totally beyond suffering, for that reason, then you think I'll study the two truths. So then we go for refuge. So just a simple way of going for refuge, visualize Shakyamuni Buddha, who's one nature with one's own gurus in the space before oneself. And reflect how Buddha embodies the three jewels of refuge, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then think of the different states of suffering one finds oneself in. You know, hunger, thirst, loneliness, discontentment, unhappiness, worries, sometimes lacking self-confidence, so forth. So think of the different forms of suffering oneself has, wish to be free from those, and the potential sufferings of future lives, and the whole situation of being trapped in samsara by disturbing emotions, ignorance, and afflictive emotions in our own minds. So journey the wish to be free from all of those, and then think about this situation of other sentient beings. How they experience the same things: hunger, thirst, unhappiness, lacking self-confidence, confusion, and then the potential to fall into the lower realms, not to mention all the beings actually in the lower realms: animals, hungry ghosts, hell beings. And then all the sufferings and dissatisfaction of being in the state of samsara, where one's thrown from life to life through the force of afflictive emotions and ignorance in one's own mind, in their own minds, those of all sentient beings. And then reflect how the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, because they teach the truth, they teach how we're bound in samsara, and they teach the way to be free from samsara, and thereby the Buddha, the teacher, what he teaches, the truth that he teaches, the Dharma, and then the community who studies, contemplates, meditates on what the Buddha taught, generates the realizations of an Arya being, Arhat, and then based on their own experience, helps free others from samsara, lead them to full enlightenment, so the Sangha. So then with faith that the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha have the ability to protect us from suffering, this life of the lower realms, of samsara in general, and can lead us to a state of full enlightenment. Then we go for refuge. So we can recite the Buddha's name mantra 3 times. Traya Mahamuni So imagine the Shakyamuni Buddha is very pleased with oneself. An emanation of Buddha absorbs into you, blesses your body, speech, and mind to develop complete understanding, unmistaken understanding, free from any doubts about the two truths. And then Buddha in front of you comes to abide in the space at the crown of your head and blesses you to develop insight into the two truths. So we can, stop the meditation there. Why don't let's just review a little bit first the two truths as they're presented according to the Great Exposition School and the Sutra School, what we've done so far. And then we'll try to just meditate briefly on those. Because last session I Last session, I spent the whole session just talking, explaining, and answering some questions. We didn't get to do any meditation on the two truths. So we'll do some meditation at the beginning of this session, and then continue with the mind-only school. So again, just to look at the first two sets of definitions. So according to the Great Exposition School, first of all, so they say the definition of a conventional truth is a phenomena such that an awareness apprehending it is canceled if it is broken up or mentally separated into its individual parts. Right? So for them, the main things are impermanent phenomena. Well, especially physical objects, you know, like a glass or a mug. It can be cut up or broken up in different parts. So at that time, the mind apprehending, you know, if you have a glass, then, you know, if you drop it and break it, then when it breaks up into individual parts, then the mind apprehending the glass disappears, right? The mind apprehending it is canceled if it's broken up. And then mentally separated, yeah, like, let's see, what is their example again? I forgot. Let's look here real quick. Oh yeah, like cloth. Let's say like a woolen cloth. So your woolen cloth, yeah, if you cut it up into pieces, it's still woolen cloth. But if you mentally separate it into, you know, fibers, for example, then the mind apprehending it disappears, right? And then for them, ultimate truth. So for them, a phenomena such that an awareness apprehending it is canceled if it is broken up or mentally separated into individual parts. And then an ultimate truth is a phenomena such that an awareness apprehending it is not canceled if it is broken up or mentally separated into its individual parts. So for example, partless particles is the main thing. And then the shortest moments of time. The shortest moments of consciousness, right, in time. And then all uncompounded phenomena, which means all permanent phenomena, right? So, right. So for them, all permanent phenomena are ultimate truths. And then the smallest units of physical stuff, right? So smallest particles, partless particles are ultimate truths. And then of consciousness, the shortest in time, you know, the shortest moments of consciousness, awareness. So like, you know, an eye consciousness that, you know, that we experience, that we directly experience, or an ear sense consciousness hearing a sound, we can mentally divide that up into very, 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 very small parts. So you think in one finger snap, you can divide up the length of time that it takes to snap your fingers, the sound basically. So you can divide that up into 60 parts, is kind of the traditional way of dividing. So it's kind of it's something we can't, you know, it's like watching a movie in one screen of a movie in old film reel movies. Now it's different with digital movies, right? But then, you know, in 1 second, there's 26 or more frames that have to pass. So we can't perceive that short of a moment of time. Right? It doesn't appear to our mind. Rather, they all blur together. So you can think you know, when we have an eye consciousness or ear sense consciousness, what appears to our mind, it's quite, it can be divided up into more and more subtle, more short moments of time. So those are more fundamental. Just like we can, you know, the particles, the atoms that make up physical things, the very small particles that make up physical things, we don't see those directly, right? Those don't directly appear to our mind. But we know that they can be divided up into very, very small particles. And then the Great Exposition School accepts the existence of these partless particles. So there's extremely small particles such that they don't have, you know, north, south, east, west, top, bottom, so forth. Although according to the higher schools, then those don't exist, right? So, yeah. So basically for the Great Exposition School, then, you know, except for these particles, then all physical things, all material things are conventional truths. But the most fundamental building blocks, the particles that they're composed of, are ultimate truths. And then again, for the Great Exposition School, then most of the instances of consciousness that we experience, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, mental thought consciousness, mental consciousness, those are conventional truths because they can be mentally divided up. And when we think about the smaller moments that make them up, then that appearance of the whole consciousness, it disappears. But those shortest moments in time of consciousness, those are ultimate truths, right? And then think about a person, like what we are as a person. What do you think? According to the Great Exposition School, you know, the person, would be a conventional truth or an ultimate truth? You can raise your hand or your virtual hand or your real hand if you want to answer. So what we are as a person, according to the Great Exposition School, do you think we are conventional truth or ultimate truth? Right. So it means if we're a conventional truth, it means the mind apprehending the person. When we divide it up, you know, say either physically or mentally in the different parts, then the mind apprehending the person, it disappears. Right. Remember, that's their definition. Whereas an ultimate truth is something that, so conventional truth, a phenomena such that an awareness apprehending it is canceled if it is broken up or mentally divided into its individual parts. So as a person, are we that? Or are we a phenomena that such that an awareness apprehending it is not canceled if it is broken up or mentally divided into individual parts? So what do you think? What are we as a person? According to Great Exposition School, are we a conventional truth or ultimate truth?
Conventional.
Conventional truth? Yeah.
Yes.
Why? So what? How would you divide up the person?
Like first we have covered with the skin, first layers. When we remove everything, person is not there. That's why I thought it's a conventional.
Right. Yeah. And then also we can divide up into our body, our mind, and then like you say, even our body is like a conventional truth because we can divide it up into layers of skin, the blood, and bones, and then the mind apprehending the body is canceled, right? The whole body, and then we get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then so so I agree. I think the person for Great Exposition School, then the person is a conventional truth. Actually, for all the schools, for all 4 schools, the person is a conventional truth. But because they each have their own definition, slightly different definitions of conventional truth, then the person is a conventional truth for different reasons. What about like the Buddha's teachings, like the Dharma? The Buddha's teachings, for example. What do you think? Are they conventional truth or ultimate truth for Great Exposition School?
I'm sorry, it's conventional, I think.
Why?
Oh.
How would you divide up? How would you break that up such that the mind, the awareness apprehending them is canceled?
I think, okay. Buddha's teachings are not on the not like things, no, they are saved in our consciousness. Maybe it is ultimate.
Yeah, I mean, one way to think is like the Buddha's teachings can be divided up into different sutras, right? So there's different sutras. So when you mentally divide up the Buddha's teachings into like, you know, I don't know, or the teachings on the Four Noble Truths, the teachings on the True Truths, the teachings on refuge, teachings on the, you know, the 10 non-virtuous actions and so forth, then the mind apprehending Buddha's teachings as a whole, it's canceled, right? when you think about the different parts. Yeah. Anyway, there's definitely room for debate. You know, we can debate with the Great Exposition School, but why don't we just take a few minutes now and try to meditate on this view, their view of the two truths. So remember, because this is, I mean, it's a very important method for realizing emptiness, right? So remember, one of the main reasons for studying the two truths is mainly to get an understanding of ultimate truth, right? And so we're looking at the two truths now in terms of the four Buddhist tenet schools. So the Great Exposition School, and then above that, the Sutra School, then higher than that, the Middle Way School, and then, the Mind Only School, and then higher than that, the Middle Way School, right? Then within the Middle Way School, we'll look at two different ones, the Autonomous Middle Way School, and then higher than that, so the highest is the Consequentialist Middle Way School. So finally, what we want to arrive at is an understanding of ultimate truth as it's posited or as it's explained by the Consequentialist Middle Way School, right? Because it's that understanding, that wisdom understanding the ultimate truth according to that school that accurately refutes or is an antidote to the most fundamental ignorance, which causes all of our suffering. But the way to, in order to understand ultimate truth as it's explained by the Consequentialist Middle Way School, the highest one, first we have to understand how ultimate truth is explained by the Autonomous Middle Way School, and how the Consequentialist Middle Way School is something more subtle than that, right? So first we understand the more gross one, Autonomous Middle Way School. To understand how they explain ultimate truth, we have to understand the one below that, the Mind Only School, how they explain, right? And then to understand how they explain, we have to understand the one below that, the Sutra School. And to understand that well, we have to start right at the beginning with the Great Exposition School, right? So the way to meditate on, finally understanding emptiness or ultimate truth, as it's explained according to the Consequentialist Middle Way School, is to start with especially understanding ultimate and also conventional truth, as is explained according to the Great Exposition School. So the way we meditate on it, though, is it's like we try to pretend that we are a proponent of the Great Exposition School. They have this way of dividing up everything in the world into conventional truths and ultimate truth. So we want to try to, get inside that view of the world. Try to imagine, how is it that they see the world, and why do they say that, this very subtle particles, the smallest, the consciousness in the shortest moments of time, and then permanent phenomena. Why do they say that those are ultimate truths? And then why do they say that everything else, basically, so for them, all the more coarse impermanent phenomena, like the ordinary things we can see, taste, touch, smell, and then the ordinary consciousness we experience, why those are all conventional phenomena for them, right? So then the way to meditate is just try to take these definitions of the two truths. I'll share my screen again now, and then try to imagine, so the Great Exposition School, how they divide up everything in the world, and just try to get a feel for that, right? So let's do that now. Get comfortable wherever you are, and just try to meditate on, reflect on, and kind of fill out in your mind, this picture that is kind of just kind of alluded to almost by the Great Exposition School's definition of the conventional truth and ultimate truth. So why don't we take conventional truth first? Try to think of all the different things that are conventional truths. Try to think of many examples and try to think why are they conventional truths, right? Because they can be broken down into smaller parts that are not that thing, such that when we break them up, then the awareness apprehending that whole thing, it disappears, it's canceled. And then think about their definition of ultimate truth, right? A phenomenon such that an awareness apprehending it is not canceled or broken up, if it is broken up or mentally separated into individual parts, right? So think about how for them, especially the smallest possible particles, and then shortest moments of consciousness are ultimate truths. And then also all uncompounded phenomena, which means all permanent phenomena, are ultimate truths. So try to imagine why is that for them? Why do they consider those things more fundamental, right? More kind of really existing? The reality somehow more basic, right? More reliable. So let's pause meditation there. And then look at the, so next the Sutra School. Just to review again. Just to review again the definitions of ultimate truth, conventional truth, according to the Sutra School. So the Sutra School, it's a little bit more simple. Yeah, they say the definition of an ultimate truth is a phenomena that is ultimately able to perform a function, right? So here, I mean, it means the phenomena can do something. It can affect other things. So two of the most important functions that it's really talking about is one, phenomena that can produce an effect, right? They can act as a cause. So just like a seed, you know, when it meets moisture and warmth and nutrients of the soil, it can produce a sprout, right? And then produce a tree or a flower or something, or a fruit, right? So a seed, it can grow into something. It can become something else, and thereby it produces an effect. Or like, like the sun, it radiates light rays and illuminates things. So it helps produce eye consciousness. Or sounds, they produce so another way of another particular kind of effect is when things produce an awareness of them, right? So when we speak, we produce a sound, and then that sound produces an ear consciousness that hears that sound, right? So anything, you might have heard when we were meditating, there were some dogs howling outside my room. So like basically all impermanent things, all compounded phenomena, they have the ability to produce effects. So what do you think? For the Sutra School, again, as a person, are we a conventional truth or ultimate truth?
Ultimate truth.
Ultimate truth. We don't perform a function. Remember, so Sutra School, the definition of an ultimate truth, yeah, is a phenomenon that's ultimately able to perform a function. Yeah, exactly. So we are ultimately able to perform a function. So we're ultimate truth. Did you say conventional truth or ultimate truth, Joseph?
Ultimate truth.
You said ultimate? Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we're ultimate truth because we can perform a function. Yeah. Whereas, so for a Sutra School, ultimate truth and impermanent thing or functioning thing are one meaning, right? So all impermanent phenomena are able to perform a function. Whereas a conventional truth is one meaning with permanent phenomena. So it's things that are not ultimately able to perform a function, right? Because permanent things, they cannot produce causes, right? They don't act as effect. They don't act as causes, and they're not able to produce effects. You know, just think how, if well, like if you have a piece of fruit in your room, for example, the fruit it gives off an odor. It produces an eye. You see it every time you see it. According to this school, it produces an eye sense consciousness, or it's one cause of an eye sense consciousness. It can give rise to the growth of like mold, or other insects can eat it or something. But if you have a permanent thing in your room, like the mere absence of a dog in your room, or the mere absence of an elephant in your room, that's a permanent phenomenon, right? That mere absence of an elephant in the room. That thing, it's like nothing can touch it, nothing can see it. It doesn't affect other things around it. Nothing grows on it. You can't hear it. It doesn't have any effect on anything. It doesn't even, it's not like it just produces an awareness in your mind of that. It's rather you have to think of that thing and then you're aware of it. So the awareness of it comes more from the side of the mind rather than the object producing an awareness of it, right? If you have a piece of fruit in your room, every time you walk in your room, you just turn your eyes towards it, and the fruit, it's like it produces an awareness of it. But every time you walk in the room, it's not like you're aware of the lack of an elephant in the room. Okay? to be aware of that, you have to make effort from the side of your mind to think, oh, is there an elephant here? No. So is that the mere absence of an elephant? Is that a thing? Yes. You know, you have to put effort from the side of your mind to be aware of that object, right? And then the same is true with like feelings. So what do you think about like, you know, feeling of happiness, feeling of sadness? Are those conventional truths or ultimate truths for the Sutra School? Dilshad, you're my only hope.
Ultimate truth, Venerable.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you, Satya. Ultimate truth. It's true. Yeah. All of our feelings, our thoughts, they're all ultimate truths, right? They produce effects. They perform functions. Okay, so let's meditate. This one's a little easier, right? You have a question, Sakit? Yeah, ask.
Yes, we discussed it last time, so I gave it some thought, and I came to the conclusion that there is really no contradiction over this, because with the Prasangika Madhyamika and the Sutra school, it appears as a contradiction, but there isn't really. What they are referring to is the first moment of consciousness, which is a direct perception. So the Sutra school. The Sutra school refers to the first moment of consciousness, which is a direct perception, and that is real. Because there's no inferential cognizer there. So that is real. You cannot say that is not real.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, Sakit. We're just talking. Why?
In the Sutra school, the conventional and the ultimate seems to be reversed vis-a-vis Madhyamika, Prasangika Madhyamika.
Yeah, wait till we get to Prasangika Madhyamika, then we can compare. For now, just try to get this.
I might not be there. There's no current.
But then you'll have
no battery, there's no current.
Yeah, maybe so, just save that question till the end. That's a little more complicated than we want to get right now. Right now we want to just keep it simple.
Right.
Okay, so let's just meditate briefly on the Sutra school view of thinking why is it that they say, so I mean the big question we need to meditate on, to contemplate is, why is it that they say that phenomena that are ultimately able to perform a function? So it means, you know, everything we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, all the external objects, and then also our minds, right? And also us as a person, we are ultimate truths, right? Whereas, so that means somehow it's like more real, right? Whereas all the permanent phenomena are conventional truths. So somehow it's kind of like they're less real, right? So try to, just reflect for a couple minutes on Sutra School's view of ultimate truth. So think of all the things that they look at and they recognize as being ultimate truths. And try to get a feeling for why do they consider those things to be ultimate truths.
Hello?
And then think of the definition of conventional truth, a phenomena that is not ultimately able to perform a function. So it means all permanent phenomena. So why do they consider those conventional truths and somehow kind of less real? Okay, so relax your attention there. And then we'll look at, so now we'll move on to the mind-only school. So these first two schools, the Great Exposition School and the Sutra school, they both are, well, generally for the people who accept those philosophical views that they espouse, generally they belong to like the, what do you say, the hero vehicle or the pratimoksha vehicle, meaning that generally their main aim is to achieve the mere freedom from samsara, right? Nirvana. Their nirvana, which is a mere release from the suffering of samsara, and thereby achieve the state of personal peace for oneself, right? They don't hold as a main aim the achieving full enlightenment, and in those schools they don't generally explain like the bodhisattva path, right? They're not, and they're mostly explained in the Pali canon, right, as opposed to the Sanskrit canon. So now when we move to the mind-only school, it belongs to the Sanskrit vehicle, basically, you could say, or the bodhisattva vehicle, the Sanskrit canon. So the view of the mind-only school and the middle way school, they're not taught in the Pali canon extensively. They're taught more in the Sanskrit canon, right? Sutras taught in Sanskrit. And especially if you look at the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma, then the Sutra school and Great Exposition school are taught in the 1st turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is taught primarily for those seeking individual liberation. Whereas the mind-only school view, and the view of the middle way school, they're taught in the, well, the mind-only view is taught in the 3rd turning of the wheel of Dharma. And the middle way school view is taught in the 2nd turning of the wheel of Dharma. Right, so the mind-only school view is primarily taught in the Dode Gondrel. It's like the sutra explaining the intent of the Buddha, is what it's called. There's one sutra where the Buddha primarily teaches the mind-only school view. So well, why is it called the mind-only school? Is it because they say that everything is the mind, is consciousness? No, it's not. It's not that they say that everything is consciousness, everything is mind, but they say everything that exists is one nature with the mind, right? So to be consciousness and to be one nature with consciousness are 2 totally different things, right? It's like, you know, like our bodies are one nature with us because they're part of us, right? So our bodies, we're not our body is not us, but our bodies are one nature with us because they're a part of who we are, right? What we are as a person. Our mind is also, we're not our mind is not us, but as a person, our minds, all of the, like our eye sense consciousness, our ear sense consciousness, all of our thoughts, they're one nature with us as a person, right? Because they're parts of us as a person. But here, when the mind-only school, when they say everything is one nature with mind, they don't mean everything is part of mind, right? So there's different ways for one thing to be one nature with another thing. So for the mind-only school, when they say everything is one nature with the mind, what they mean basically is that, well, what's a good example? Basically, they mean everything is like part of one thing that the mind is a part of. So imagine you have, like, let me give an example first, and then I'll explain what they're actually talking about. So imagine you have like a seed for, let's see, say a mango tree. So you eat a mango, you have the big pit, and the pit from the mango. So it's a seed, basically. And you plant it, and you grow a mango tree. And the mango tree has some branches on the north side and some branches on the south side, right? So those branches, like they both arose from the same seed, right? Or you can think of all the different leaves or all the different branches on the mango tree. They all arose from the same seed, right? And they're all part of the same tree. So in that way, it's like they're all one nature with the tree. They're different branches, they're different leaves, but they're all part of the same tree. So they're all one nature with that tree. But the tree is not the branches. The tree is not the leaves. The leaves and the branches are also not the tree, right? They're different things, but they're all part of the same thing. And they all arose here. The important part of the analogy here is that they all arose from the same seed, right? They all arose from the same basic cause. They're different things, but because they arose from the same basic cause, therefore they're like part of the same thing, although they're different parts of the same thing. So it's kind of like that, the mind-only school understanding. So the actual, what they actually assert, the mind-only school, is that, you know, when we have an experience, like say now we're looking at let's say we're looking at the screen of our computer or our phone. So we have an eye sense consciousness, which sees the images that appear. You know, we see the computer or we see our phone and we see the screen and all the images that appear on the phone and the computer. So according to the mind, maybe it's good to contrast first. Like according to the Sutra school, which we're just looking at, like our computer, is it an ultimate truth or a conventional truth? Okay. Shanti? Dilshan? What?
Ultimate truth.
Yeah, it's an ultimate truth. Because our computer or our phone, it performs a function, right? It's ultimately able to perform a function, right? It can do things. So therefore, in the view of the Sutra school, like the computer exists separate from us as a person. It has an external reality, right? It is externally existent. It's not part of our mind. It's not just a projection of our mind like a dream or something. Like the computer is a real thing. It exists out there. When I leave the room, it's not there. When I come back, it is there. If I sell it to someone else, it's the same computer, just someone else is using it or whatever. So the computer, it has like its own reality, basically. It has external reality. And then we just come along and experience it. And the computer creates, when we have an eye consciousness seeing the computer, mostly that eye consciousness comes about from the side of the computer, right? The computer like projects an impression of itself into our eyes and onto our mind. So that's that. So for the Sutra school and the Great Exposition school, there are external objects. Right? This is a very important term. External existence, external objects. Right? There is an external reality that we experience with our sense consciousness. Right? So all physical things, they're that are not part of our body and mind. Well, even our body, all physical things, you could say, they're external. They have an external existence. Whereas for the mind-only school, everything is like a dream, right? So what do you think? When you have a dream, if you have a dream and you dream of being in a Zoom, meeting on your computer, right? Is the computer that exists in your dream computer, does that have an external existence?
No, Venerable.
No, totally not. It's just a projection of your mind. If it had an external existence, then when you wake up, you should be able to find it and touch it and use it. But when you wake up, it disappears, right? Or even before you wake up, when the dream ends, the dream computer is just vaporized. It has no external reality. It's merely a projection of our mind, right? Why? But you can see the dream computer, when we're dreaming of a computer, we have, it's like it appears to us in our mind while we're dreaming. But that dream computer, it's not our mind, right? But it's one nature with our mind. It's something that's created by our mind, right? Just like, when we have, if we remember something, we think of something that happened in the past, or we think of something we did in the past, the thing, well, let me see, maybe this is better. If we imagine something, we imagine like, eating our favorite kind of food, right? That experience, but that we imagine the flavors and what it tastes like, basically we imagine the taste and the texture. So that that what we imagine, that's not our mind, but it's something that's created by our mind, right? It doesn't have an external reality. It's created by our mind, but it's not our mind. But it's one nature with our mind, right? That thing we imagine, just like a dream that we have. The objects that we see in our dreams, they're not our mind, but because they're created by our mind, then they're one nature with our mind, right? So for the mind-only school, everything is like that, right? Everything we experience, so for the mind-only school now, so it's much more radical view of the world than the sutra or the Great Exposition School. So now when we're looking at our computer, the eye consciousness that sees the computer and the computer that's seen by the eye consciousness, they arise from the same seed, right? So for the mind-only school, just like a mango seed, you plant a mango seed and then it grows and there's different branches and it becomes a tree that has different branches and different leaves. For the sutra school, like the experience of like seeing our computer now, for example, or hearing sounds or tasting anything, right? So that experience, those experiences grow from seeds, which are imprints in our mind, right? Or like energies in our mind. So the experience of seeing the computer now, it arises from an imprint that exists in our mind. And that imprint, it produces the experience of seeing a computer and the eye consciousness that sees the computer, right? So it's like there's this energy, this seed, just like a real seed, like a mango seed, it has a certain energy. It has the potential to produce a whole mango tree and all the branches and all the leaves and all the fruits. So it's like an energy. So like that, we have these energies, these potencies or imprints or seeds in our mind that when they ripen, they produce an experience. They produce all the experience of things that we see, of things that we hear, things we taste and touch and so forth. Just like when we're dreaming, why do we have the dreams that we have, right? Because maybe we were thinking of something, or we're afraid of something, or we're just, it's just our imagination. But our dreams are produced by certain energies in our mind, right? It's not like they come from outside. There's a certain energy in our mind that when we dream and our mind goes into that state of dreaming, then those energies, they produce both the things that appear to our mind and also the mind that experiences that appearance, right? So there might be, very, very handsome or attractive things that appear, and then we react with attachment in our dreams. There might be very scary things appear in our dream, and then we react with like fear, right? So there's both the things that appear and the mind that experiences those things are both produced from the same seed, right? Which is kind of an energy in our mind. So for dreams, that's very clear. So for the mind-only school, dreams is really everything is in reality. So for the mind-only school, then they're called mind-only school because everything we experience is one nature with the mind. Of course, our own mind is one nature with the mind. We don't need to explain that. But even things that look like they have an external physical reality, like our computer, right? So for the sutra school, there is external physical reality. Our computer, our desk, the walls around us, they do have an external physical reality. It's not that they're just projections of our mind like the things we see in a dream. But for the mind-only school, there is no external physical reality, right? That appearance of an external physical reality is a total illusion, right? It's totally not real. What is real is that everything that we see, smell, taste, touch is a projection of our mind. So the things that appear, like the computer that we're looking at now that appears to us, and the eye consciousness that sees the computer, both of those are produced from the same seed in our mind, the same energy, right? Just like in a dream, the things that we appear in the dream and the mind that experiences those things are produced from the same seed, right, or energy in our mind. So that's what we mean by mind-only school. So now to look at their definition of conventional truth and ultimate truth, then it kind of relates to that, right? So here's mind-only school. The definition of a conventional truth is that which is realized by the direct, valid cognizer, directly realizing it, by way of being together with dualistic appearance. So for the mind-only school, let's start with this dualistic appearance, right? So for the mind-only school, dualistic appearance means basically that something, it appears as distant from our mind, as separate from our mind, right? It appears like, basically it appears like it has an external reality. So for the mind-only school, like our computer, just to stick with the example, our computer is a conventional truth, right? Because what is for the, let's see, let's look at the definition again, right? That which is realized by the direct, valid cognizer, directly realized. So direct, valid cognizer. So remember, the best examples of direct, valid cognizers are our sense consciousness. Our eye sense consciousness, ear sense consciousness, nose, tongue, body sense consciousness. Those are all direct, valid cognizers. I mean, they're not always valid, but generally they're mostly valid, right? So now we have, if we have a computer or a phone in front of us and we have an eye consciousness that sees the computer or a phone, then say the eye consciousness that sees our phone or computer, that's a direct, valid cognizer apprehending our phone or our computer, right? So say with our computer, we have an eye consciousness that sees the computer. So that's a direct, valid cognizer directly realizing our computer. And it realizes by way of, so how does it experience our computer or our table or our walls around us? How does our eye consciousness experience those things? By way of being together with dualistic appearance. So here for mind-only school, what does dualistic appearance means? It means that when we, like with eye consciousness seeing the computer, just to stick with that example, the way we experience it as if it doesn't appear to us that the computer is a projection of my mind, right? Like a dream. It appears like the computer has an external reality, right? Like it's something that's separate from my mind, right? That the computer exists out there, apart from me, or distant from me, or separate from the mind that apprehends it, right? So that, just like the walls around us and everything, you know, we see around us, it looks like those objects exist out there, separate from us, and they have their own kind of power. They've been produced by certain causes and conditions that have nothing to do with my mind, right? They totally function on their own, right? So here you can see how the mind-only school is directly opposite, in a way, to the sutra school view, right? For the sutra school, ultimate truth is all these externally existent things, right? You know, plants and tables and computers and, you know, let's just stick with, you know, sounds. Those are, because they have a power, those things for the sutra school, all those things have the power to produce awareness and produce effects, therefore they're ultimate reality. For the mind-only school, all those things are conventional truths because they're not real. They appear as externally existent, having their own reality, existing apart from or separate from our minds. But actually, according to the mind-only school, actually those things are all just like appearances in a dream. What they are is they don't have any external reality at all. They're just projections of energy in our minds. So these imprints or seeds in our mind, that when they ripen, you know, just like a mango seed, when it ripens, it becomes a mango tree. So like these imprints or in our mind, when they ripen, they become, on the one hand, like an eye consciousness, seeing something. And on the other hand, they become the object seen by the eye consciousness, right? So this is it's a really radical way of seeing the world, right? It's kind of, I mean, long time ago in college, I studied the philosophy of this Leibniz. I think he's like a Dutch philosopher. I mean, one European philosopher. So he has this theory of the monad. But anyway, his idea is similar, that our whole world we experience is all a projection of our mind, and we cannot get outside of that, right? But then what's difficult with that view, so for the mind-only school, like everything we experience around us, it seems like there's a real, buildings outside, there's real trees outside. There's this whole external environment that we just come into and experience. But when we go away, the environment is still there and it still functions on its own, regardless of whether we're there or not. But for the mind-only school, like the whole environment that we experience is all a projection of our mind. It's like we're living a really long dream, right? It's as if when we were born, we started a dream, this dream of being this human being in this planet Earth, in this world. And then that dream, it never ends until we die, right? But that whole time, although it looks like there's this whole external reality, just like when we're dreaming, we don't know we're dreaming, right? When we're dreaming, if we don't know we're dreaming, it looks like what we see, the places we go, the people we talk to, it looks like it's a real world out there. Like we're just experiencing this real world, right? But then only when the dream stops and we wake up, we realize, oh, that wasn't real at all. It was just projection of my mind. So while we're dreaming, it seems like there is a real external kind of reality to what our mind is projecting as we're dreaming, right? Only when we wake up, we realize it's a dream. So for the mind-only school, it's like that. When we're born into this life, we begin this dream of being, having this body, being man or woman, being born to this parents, being in this family, being in this place, going to different places, having different thoughts, having different experiences. All those are a projection of our mind and our karma, which means our karma, basically. We've created the karma to have all those experiences. I mean, of course, all the Buddhist schools, they agree that the experiences we have are shaped by our karma. But the way our experiences are shaped by our karma is very different according to the different schools. So in a way, like the mind-only school is extremely radical in how they say that our experience is shaped by our karma, in that everything we see, smell, hear, taste, touch is a projection of our mind, which means basically a projection of our karma. And there is no external reality to it. So that's why, coming back to their definition of the two truths, for them, conventional truths are things that, those things which are realized by a direct, valid cognizer, directly realizing it, by way of being together with dualistic appearance, right? So it means for them, all of our sense consciousness, they're mainly looking at our sense consciousness. When we see things, it looks like those things have external reality, and that appearance of this, when we talk about, when I say that it looks like things have an external reality, it means like, just go back to the example of the computer. It looks like the computer exists as, the way it exists is something separate from my mind. It's distant from my mind, right? It's out there. And then I'm just perceiving what is out there, right? So that's what they mean by this kind of dualistic appearance, mainly. So therefore, for them, the computer is a conventional truth. The table is a conventional truth. Sounds are conventional truth. The tastes are conventional truth. All the things we eat are conventional truth. Our bodies are conventional truth. Because the way we perceive those things of our senses, they appear to have this kind of external reality, whereas actually they don't, right? They don't have that kind of reality at all. Let me just look briefly at this kind of root text again. Although I don't think they give any other examples in here. Oh, yeah, they do, okay. No, they don't. They just, Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just let me share this one again. So for the yeah. So just to sum up, what conventional truth is for the mind-only school is all impermanent things are conventional truths, and all permanent things that are not selflessness are, so all permanent things except for the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena are conventional truths for mind-only school. So they all have the direct perceiver directly perceiving them has dualistic appearance. So maybe, I mean, so let's talk about the ultimate truth now, and the contrast will help you understand what they mean by conventional truth, right? So the mind-only school definition of ultimate truth is that which is realized by the direct valid cognizer, directly realizing it by way of the vanishing of dualistic appearance, right? So, I mean, the vanishing, so it means, so think about what they mean here basically is the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. So what they mean is that when we, well, maybe it'll help to start with an analogy. So go back to the analogy of a dream. So when we're dreaming and we don't know we're dreaming, like we have a dream that seems very real and we don't know we're dreaming, then everything appears as, you know, externally existing, right? Not a projection of our mind. But imagine if while we're dreaming, we somehow become aware that we're dreaming, right? While we're dreaming at night, imagine we become aware that we're just dreaming. But before we stop dreaming, while we're still dreaming, we become aware that we're dreaming. And then, so what that means is we realize that everything we're experiencing is just a projection of my mind. There's no, it doesn't have any external reality. So try to imagine, you know, kind of deeply, like if we really, at that moment when we're dreaming, we really deeply see or know that what appears in the dream is just a projection of my mind, then, I mean, you can kind of imagine how formerly when we didn't know we're dreaming, things seem to be very external, have external reality. But then when we realize we're dreaming, all of a sudden we realize there's no separation between my mind and what's appearing to my mind. They're totally mixed. They're totally like part of the same thing, right? So you can kind of imagine how there's a vanishing of dualistic appearance, right? So remember, the dualistic appearance means the sense that there's distance or separateness between what appears to the mind and the mind that apprehends, right? They're two separate things. Whereas the vanishing of dualistic appearance means it appears as if they're mixed. There's no distance anymore between the mind that appears and the things that appear to the mind. They're recognized as being part of the same thing somehow, right? So there's no sense of distance between them. So that's what, so you can kind of imagine then, take that over to, so imagine we're meditating on like the emptiness of, so for the mind-only school, I want to get it just right. So their definition of, let me see. Oh yeah, so here. No. Yeah, this is the main one I wanted to show you. Let's see, I'll try to blow it up a little bit. Oops. Okay. So illustrations, so the main thing they're talking about is the subtle selflessness of phenomena, right? So which is, for example, the emptiness that is, for example, this is just an example. The emptiness that is a form and the valid cognizer apprehending that form being empty of being different substances, right? So what does that mean? Just to read it again, and then I'll explain. So for example, so maybe we can talk about our computer, because that's the example I've been using, or your phone. So for the mind-only school, the subtle selflessness of phenomena, which is an ultimate truth, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's getting a little complicated here, but what we're trying to understand here is how, because for them, ultimate truth is something such that the direct valid cognizer, which directly perceives it by way of the vanishing of dualistic appearance, right? So we'll relate that to this subtle selflessness of phenomena. So the emptiness that is, say, so form like our computer is an example of a form. And so say our computer and the valid cognizer apprehending our computer. So our I consciousness is the valid cognizer apprehending our computer, being empty of being different substances, right? So this is the key. For the mind-only school, our computer and the I consciousness that sees the computer are part of the same substance. Just like, because they've arisen from the same seed, right? Just like the different branches and the different leaves of a mango tree, they're part of the same substance, right? Which is the mango tree. Or, I mean, in a more subtle example is our dreams. All the things that appear, so the computer or the people, the sounds that appear in our dream is part of the same substance of the mind experiencing those things, right? So they're empty of being separate substances, right? So imagine if we meditate deeply on this subtle selflessness of phenomena, that everything I experience is the same substance with my mind, right? Everything is like a dream. It's merely a projection of my mind. So therefore, those things that appear, they're not my mind. They're different from my mind, but they're also not like a different substance. They're not of a different nature, right? They're part of the same thing, kind of, that my mind is part of. So what that thing is like difficult to say. It's kind of the sphere of reality. But you can imagine how if you meditate on that subtle selflessness of phenomena, that when you directly perceive that, there's a breakdown of this appearance of external reality and things being separate from my mind. That breaks down, or that dualistic appearance vanishes, and what you left with is this sense that there's no separateness actually between my mind and everything that appears to my mind, right? So there becomes this experience of non-duality, right? So this is really important because it's something that really you can see it's a big difference, So essentially, just to kind of review, the main difference between ultimate truth and conventional truth for the mind-only school is whether, right? So is here, right? So for conventional things that are conventional truths, like tables, computers, sounds, food, tastes, all permanent phenomena, all of our well, they don't talk about our mind so much, but our mind, you can say, right? So those things, actually mind is a little problematic, but we'll come back to that. But think about external things, especially objects of our senses, things that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. That's what they're mainly looking at. That all those things are conventional truths. Why? Because the direct valid cognizers, meaning mainly our sense consciousness, right? Our eye sense consciousness, ear sense consciousness, so forth, that directly realize those things. They realize those things by way of being together with or having dualistic appearance. So there's the appearance of external reality, right? Which is false. That's a false appearance according to the mind-only school. So basically, they're saying conventional truths are things that the direct valid cognizer that apprehends those things has this dualistic appearance, right? Whereas conventional or ultimate truths, right? Ultimate truths are things such that the direct valid cognizer, directly realizing those things, does not have dualistic appearance. There's a vanishing of dualistic appearance, right? So again, I mean, the simple way to kind of make sense of this is to think about, you know, when we're having a dream, thinking that, not recognizing that it's a dream, and the things appear to have external reality. And then we realize it is a dream, and we realize what we're experiencing is just the things that appear are actually part of our own mind. There's a breakdown of this external separate reality. So for the mind-only school, then finally, the things that are conventional truths are basically the two different kinds of emptiness: selflessness of phenomena and selflessness of persons. Right. So actually, I'm running overtime now. So I know you probably have questions. I don't know. I'll take one or two questions. But yeah, there's still. I mean, this mind-only school is a little complex. So there's more to explain to kind of make it more clear. But we'll stop there, and then I'll take questions. Okay, Artana.
Yes. So according to mind-only school, then if two people are looking at the same thing, then that, let's say a computer, two persons are looking at, that is one substance with both their minds, right?
No, it's so. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, right? Because that is a real difficulty for the mind-only school. How to explain that we see the same things, right? That it looks like when two people are looking at a computer, it looks like they both see the same computer, right? So for the Sutra school, that's why there is an external computer that produces an awareness of that computer in two different people, right? But it's the same object that's producing the two different people's, awareness of that computer. For the mind-only school, well, I mean, they can answer in different ways, right? If you ask different people that are representing the mind-only school, they might answer in different ways. But I mean, in one way, it's like for the mind-only school, there's actually two different computers there. One, but they appear the same to the same two people. Why do they appear the same? Because those two different people have the same kind of karma. They have very similar karma to experience the same computer. So probably the more classical mind-only school would probably want to say that, yeah, those people don't experience the same computer. That's an illusion, right? That because if they do experience the same computer, it would have to be just like you say, that the computer is is one entity with both of their minds, right? But then that would have to mean that, because remember, for the mind-only school, why is the computer one entity with a person's mind? Because it arose from the same imprint, right? Because there's an imprint that produces both the appearance of the computer, which actually is the computer. I mean, there's nothing, for the mind-only school, there's nothing more to the computer than just the appearance, right? So why is the computer one entity with a person's mind? Because the appearance of the computer and the mind that experiences the computer arose from the same imprint, basically, the same kind of imprint in the mind. So if the same computer is one entity with two people's minds, it would mean that there had to be one imprint that gave rise to both the appearance of the computer and both people's experience of the computer. But how do you posit that imprint? Because an imprint only exists in a person's continuum, right? So like the imprints that exist in your continuum, they don't exist in mine. The imprints that exist in my continuum, they don't exist in yours. So you can't really posit one imprint that gives rise to both your experience of the computer and my experience of it are, you know, two different people's experience of the same computer, right? So you have to posit two different imprints, and therefore you basically have to posit two different computers that are effects of two different imprints. So that really is the big challenge for the mind-only school, though. How do we explain that what we experience in the world is so similar, right? It kind of leads them to this, almost this kind of ridiculous story that we've all created, you know, almost the exact same, by having shared experiences in the past, we've created almost the karma to experience things in almost the exact same way. It seems like, you know, it seems like a very contorted and overly complex way of explaining why we experience a similar world, right? So that's why later on the prasangika, I mean the consequentialist middle way school, they reject the mind only. They reject this mind only interpretation, right? So they say that there are external objects, right? They kind of go back to that, saying there are external objects. The computer is not merely a projection of our mind. But how they explain it, we'll get to when we come to that. But it's important to know here that, like, so for the Great Exposition School and the Sutra School, they say there are external objects, right? The things we see, the hear, taste, touch, for example, those things, they exist externally, and they create our awareness of those things. They're not just projections of our mind, right? For the Sutra School and the mind-only school. I mean, sorry, the Sutra School and the Great Exposition School, there are these external objects. The mind-only school, they reject external objects. And then you get back to the autonomous middle way school. There's two different parts of that. There's the Sutra autonomous middle way and the mind-only autonomous middle school. Usually we mainly focus on the mind-only autonomous middle way school. So they also accept that there are no external objects, or they reject external objects. But then when you get, finally, you get to the consequentialist middle way school, they again accept external objects, right? So the Great Exposition School, the Sutra School, they say there are external objects. Mind-only school and mainly the autonomous middle way school, they say there are no external objects. And then finally you get to the consequentialist middle way school, and they again say there are external objects. But the way they posit them is quite different than the way the Sutra School does. Okay, one more question?
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
When you use the word dualistic means two. The word dual means two. So here, when you say they are from the same substance, then how can they be dualistic?
Well, because, in actuality, they're not dualistic, but they have a dualistic appearance, right? So for the mind-only school, when they say, like, when we see our computer, it appears like it's not part of the same substance with our mind, right? So according to mind-only school, they're saying when we see external objects, like our table, our chair, you know, our computer, our body, it looks like there are two things. Like our mind that experiences those is one thing, and then the things, you know, we experience is a separate thing, right? So therefore they're dual. They're two separate things. Whereas in actuality, they're part of the same substance, right? So in actuality, they're not dual. That's kind of
contradictory what you're saying, because if they are from the same origin or whatever, then how are they dual?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Actually, they're not dual, but there's a dualistic appearance. They appear as if they're two separate things. Does that make sense, Sebastian?
Why do you use the word radical? You used it 3 times. What is so radical about it that it is that you use the word radical?
Because it's very different from our ordinary way of perceiving things. Our ordinary way of thinking how things exist, it's very, very different. And that way it's radical.
But I'm still not convinced about the dual part, because if you are saying they're from the same origin, then they're not dual. They're non-dual, in fact.
Yeah, I know. That's what I just said. They are non-dual, but they have a dualistic appearance. Anyway, I don't have anything more to say than what I just said. So let's dedicate, and then whatever questions you have, if you still have questions, write them down or make sure you remember them till next Tuesday, and then you can ask at that time. So I'll again review just the mind-only school a little bit next Tuesday, and then we'll meditate on it, and then we'll go on to the autonomous middle way school. Okay? So let's dedicate, and then I'll turn it over to Shanti Ji. So I'll share again some verses of prayer. Yeah. So think of all the merit we've generated with a positive motivation at the beginning, and rejoice. Having generated bodhicitta motivation, refuge, and we've been looking at the Buddha's teachings on these different presentations of the true truths, according to how excellent it is that we're thinking about. Basically, we're thinking about what is reality, and what's the difference between the way things actually exist and the way they appear to me. Right. So even having a doubt about this it shakes the roots of samsara. Right? So how excellent it is, then think about all the merits created by Shakyamuni Buddha and all the different Buddhist teachers down to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and our teachers. Rejoice. And rejoice in all the merit created by all sentient beings, helping one another, serving one another, benefiting one another. So all this merit we dedicate, especially for the flourishing of the Buddha Dharma, especially for the flourishing of Choe and Ling and all other Buddhist centers experiencing hardship during the pandemic now around the world. And we especially dedicate for that this global pandemic of COVID-19 will be quickly eliminated, that effective vaccines can be quickly produced and administered, distributed to people all around the world, and the economy can continue. To provide meaningful livelihoods to all, let everyone be free from poverty, and especially we can use this opportunity of the global pandemic to make significant steps to eliminate global climate destruction, global warming, and climate destruction. And then we can use this opportunity to create systems that global economic, social, governance systems that eliminate all suffering, eliminate poverty, abuse, oppression, violence, war, and so forth. So in short, may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering, physical or mental. And may all of our actions only contribute to this. And may all of our actions as well only contribute towards the well-being and happiness of all sentient beings. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space, just like space and the great elements such as earth. May I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, for as long as space remains and for as long as sentient beings remain. Until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And especially for the long and stable life of His Holiness Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. May all their holy activities and intentions succeed without any obstacles whatsoever. Okay, so thank you all for joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you again next week. So Shanti, did you want to say anything?
Thank you very much for the profound teachings and meditation sessions today. Thank you, Legtsok. For the participants, I have a few announcements about the upcoming programs. We have a special event this Saturday, August 29th, from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. India time. The event is a talk by an eminent research scholar, Dr. Pranshu Saṁvṛti. Dr. Saṁvṛti will give us an elaborate presentation on the ancient Nalanda University and its contribution to Mahayana Buddhism. Then on Sunday, August 30th, from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. India time, Venerable Tenzin Namgyal will offer us part 6 of the teaching series, Transforming Suffering into Happiness. Part 6 of this teaching series, Two Truths in Buddhism with Venerable Legtsok, will be next hosted on Tuesday, September 01 from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. India time. Thank you very much, everyone. And once again, thank you, Venerable. Thank you very much for today's session.